Yo, how we doing? In today's video, we're going to be looking at our tornado spam shaman. Now, this build is going to be all about just sending out as many tornadoes as you can, and then using the nodes within the tree that make the lightning bolts. We're just going to be spamming out lightning bolts, but we're actually turning those into little ice spikes with one of the new skills for the shaman, Gathering Storm. There's actually a lot of cool little synergies in here that aren't very apparent just because the tooltips are a little weird. So when we get to the skills, I'll be going through everything that I've tested within Gathering Storm and how it all works out with this build. And so far, this thing has been a blast. My gear is still pretty darn bad. I'm actually working towards doing the Merchant Guild just so I can buy my better gear and get these build videos out quicker, because trying to farm has been terrible. I've not been getting any sort of good luck as like I did on my Falconer, and even then that can still have a lot better gear if I just go out and buy it. So hopefully within the next few days we can start churning out these builds even quicker once I level up the Merchant Guild. But everything else with this build has been a ton of fun. Its clear speed is incredibly fast. With the perfect gear, you're gonna end up at like 100% move speed basically at all times. You're also gonna end up clearing the entire map around you just by walking. All you got to do is cast like 1 or 2 nados and they'll kill everything around you because they'll just auto target with their little ice spikes. And overall, it just feels really good to play. Farming arenas feels really good with this, and you will be needing to farm some arenas with this with the boots that I want to have. I actually don't even have them in this build right now, so once I do get those, they're going to be a lot better. But otherwise, there's a lot of gear that you can kind of mix in and out. There's a couple different ways of putting this all together. But right now, I've been pretty happy with it. I feel pretty tanky. My resistances aren't the greatest. I'm missing a little bit of physical and poison right now. But for the most part, this has been feeling really good. So I wanted to share it with you guys, get you started, and then once I get into the Merchants Guild and I get my better gear, we'll do an update of this build a little bit later on, and we'll see exactly how it plays out once I get to test everything in game with the gear that I want to try. But let's go ahead and jump right into this build. So with this build, the first thing that you're going to notice is that we are not using any uniques whatsoever. Now, I do wish I could be using unique boots, and that is the Vayon's Chariot, but I wouldn't really use those until you can get at least like a 1 or 2 LP version and get the movement speed and then hybrid health on them. But in the time being, just run some boots that can help you survive, like these right here, where it gives you a ton of health, ton of armor, and some movement speed. But I just wanted to point that out at the start of this build, just showing that you do not need anything fancy to go ahead and play this. But let's go over the skills first, because that is going to be the most important part. Nados is our main skill, so what we're going to be trying to do with this is just spam as many nados as possible. We don't care about the nado itself's damage, so what we're going to be doing is grabbing the duration just so they last longer. The more that we can have of these on the field at once, the more damage you're going to be doing, especially to bosses. And then you're going to want hurricanes so you can get to the double cast chance. You do not care about the pull strength. They're going to hit everything on your screen anyways. And then we can go into tornado aspect of the storm. This way we can get all of the increased movement speed, the mana efficiency, the attack speed. Attack speed is really nice with this. You're going to be up pretty dang high without even any attack cast speed on your gear. You're going to be sitting at, I think, just around like 60 or 70 cast speed, which is really good. And then we just get an extra point, so I'd throw it into the storm duration over here. You could just do into 5% cast speed here too. Completely up to you what you do with this last point. But then the main thing for this entire build is right here, Charge Storm. This is going to send out a storm bolt at a nearby enemy every 2 seconds. And then we're going to make that much more frequent. We're going to increase its frequency by 140%. So that way, every time we click our tornado, we send out 2 tornadoes, both of which are sending out all of our different storm bolts. Now, let's go into Gathering Storm, because that's going to influence our storm bolts the most. Now, this tree has a lot going on with it in terms of your tooltips. There's a lot that it doesn't really explain to you. I've tried my best to test out different things and what is actually affecting our storm bolt damage. I have gone through and tested this node right here, Tempest Weapon, Thunderous Strikes, and also Concentrated Storm. And all 3 of these seem to affect our storm bolt damage that come out of our tornadoes. If you guys want to do some own testing, and let me know in the comments if you find anything different. But right now, this has been working, at least to some extent. So I will be speccing into these fully. But for everything else in this tree, what we're going to need to be focusing on is obviously grabbing the penetrate lightning resistance. We are changing this to cold because this is going to synergize really well with our war cry. We will get to that in a minute. So that's why we are moving off the shock storm bolts. And then from there, we can grab Tempest weapon. Since we will be using an axe with this setup, at least for right now. We might be using a katana later on once we get to the perfect gear, but for right now, an axe works really well. And this is going to help you make up for the, obviously you can't have 2 wands, so you can get a ton of extra spell damage out of this. And we can combine this with some passive points for even more flat spell damage. And then from here, we can grab a lightning strikes twice. This way we can get to the repeat chance of your storm bolts. Then concentrated storm for more damage, and also it reduces their targeting area, which is actually super helpful because one of the things I had an issue with early on in this build before I was doing some gathering storm stuff was if there was a single elite or whatever, if you're trying to kill like an exiled mage, it would just target everything around them, and then the main target you wanted to kill wouldn't die. And these still have really good range at 32% less, and it still clears pretty much your whole screen, but not quite. Before you were hitting things off your screen, and now you got to be at least somewhat localized, so it helps out a lot in focusing on a single target. And then from here, we don't care about storm stack stuff at all, so this part doesn't matter, but what this is going to allow us to do is get 1% base crit chance per Maelstrom, which is going to synergize with our other 2 skills. So let's look at Warcry first right here. Now Warcry is going to be doing a lot for us, so the main thing we're going to be doing with Warcry is turning it into a totem. This way we can just keep spamming it. It's going to use its ability twice. And you can keep going, and you can essentially keep its benefits up at all times. This has a 5-second cooldown, which is very short. And then from here, what we can end up doing, and this is why we swapped our storm bolts to cold, is when we change our Warcry to cold, we can actually get increased cold damage up to 250%. That's an issue that I currently have with this build, is a lot of our like additive damage over here is not very high out of the gate. It's hard to fit a lot of that in with some of the other passives that we need. But with this, what we can end up doing is getting a free 250%, which is huge. And then you combine that with the 100% increased crit chance and the chill chance over here with Bringing of Winter, and you end up with a really good combo. This additive damage scenario right here is another reason why I wanted the Vaillant's Chariot in this build, just because, like I said, we can have pretty dang close to 100% movement speed if we had that. So we're at 84 right now. If we get like an LP Vaillant's Chariot and get some movement speed on there, you're going to basically be at 100%, or at least very close to it, depending on your rolls. So that's why I really want to get those. But then the other big part of Warcry here is, one, we can be invulnerable for a second after casting it. This helps you out a lot, just because when you go into an invulnerable state, your tornadoes are still going to be doing damage around you, and they're going to leech health for you. So you can actually save yourself from dying quite a bit as you're spamming this. And then we can get, obviously, a little bit of healing is pretty nice. But the big thing down here that we need is Whirlpool. So whenever we cast our Warcry, we get to stacks of Maelstrom. So up to 4. I currently have 3 in here right now just because I don't have any points on my relic. And I did just want to cleanse ailments right now in case I get poisoned, something like that. I can always use this to make sure I don't have a dot on me, and I don't really need any more than this. So what you're going to end up doing with this build is you are going to just constantly be spamming this and your Maelstroms, and you can just, all you need to do is get over the 6 stacks for the increased frenzy and the haste stuff right here, because that will always be active as long as you are spamming these. And another thing to note, that increased cold damage that we get from here, this will persist even after that 5-second cooldown is up. So if we go ahead and use it right here, as you can see, it went up. And even though the totem's gone, we still have that buff. This is still ready to go, and now the buff just went away. Now with the Maelstrom over here, what we're gonna end up doing is focusing on Beneath the Waves, so we can get the increased stacks per cast. So we use it once, right up to 4 stacks. Then we use our Warcry, and that's what's going to get us over that 6th threshold. And that 6th threshold is what's going to give us our haste and our frenzy, so we can be spamming our nados more, moving faster. And we're also going to be making sure those stacks last for as long as possible. And then when those stacks are up above 6 or more, we can have those actually sending out storm bolts for us. So that's a little bit extra clear and damage for us, just for completely free and passive along with everything else that we're doing. So all these skills synergize just so well, and it feels really, really good. And our final one is going to be Fury Leap. The traversal obviously is a really nice part, but the other big one is going to be Lagan's Wrath. So when we're leaping, we're going to create storm bolts, and they're going to be much more frequent. And then the big one here, and this is how we deal a lot more damage, is we're going to basically take half of our attunement and add that as flat spell damage. And whenever we get a storm bolt kill, which is going to be all of our kills, it has a chance of resetting our Fury Leap. So we can use these with Warrior's Entrance over here and get to the flat 15 spell damage, and we can technically stack this. So if you had some tornadoes out and then you leaped, and as you are killing whatever, like the Exiled Mage, whatever it is, and it kills something behind you, you can end up getting this to reset. You could get 30 spell damage. So it ends up stacking very well and being just a really good synergy. I do forgot to change this point right here with the frenzy duration just because I have the Maelstrom stuff. So just put this over here into Panther Strike so you can get it on a little bit faster cooldown. And the other big part here is the immune while leaping. Same thing with the War Cry, where when we're immune, we can use this as a chance to heal and get out of sticky scenarios, just because our tornadoes are going to be always down and causing damage with all of our leech and stuff. So it's a good little get out of jail free card. So with all of these skills together, what you're going to end up doing is spamming your totems and your maelstroms whenever you see like the Lagan's whatever at 3 stacks. Just use it whenever it's at that. So basically with that rotation, you do the War Cry and the Maelstrom, and then right before the War Cry is ready to go, you can do another Maelstrom, and you can keep this around like 15 to 20 stacks if you're using them as much as you can. So it ends up being really good. Each one of these is a flat crit chance. It's not going to show up on here though, but you can see as long as I have a good amount of stacks, we're going to be guaranteed critting here. So that ends up being very, very helpful. And then otherwise, you're going to just spam your NATOs. And then after you spam a lot of NATOs, you're going to do your leap, and that's going to help you deal more damage to the target. On my hotbar, I do have Eterra's Blessing right now, just because we don't need Gathering Storm on our hotbar. You're never going to actually use it as a skill. So I just have Eterra's Blessing for right now, but feel free to slot whatever you want into that final slot. But that about sums it up for all of our skills. There's a lot of synergies, a lot of moving parts here, but it ends up working out really well. Quickly going over our passive trees, we do a good amount here in the base Primalist, obviously a lot here in Shaman, and we're going to throw a little bit in Druid just for some more health here with Spirit Warden and some like health regen. So a lot of good stuff there. So that's going to be those 7 points. And I'm only at level 95 right now, so there's a couple more points, and I'll let you guys know where to put those. But here in the Primalist tree, what you're going to want to be focusing on is health, and then moving on over, at least if you have the axe, like I said, there will possibly be a katana version of this later on, but for right now with the axe, you are going to want Elder Branch. This is going to be giving you 15 base spell damage. So when you combine that with the node from Gathering Storm, you can get, I believe it's like 30 something or 40 something base spell damage between the two, which is really nice. I do have Berserker on right now just in case I get low health. I don't have great endurance right now with my current gear, so this helps me out, save me, and let me use like my leap or my War Cry to get that invulnerability and get some health back. Otherwise, you're going to want to be dual wielding and more increased health here with Hunter's Restoration. But that's currently what my base Primalist tree is. In the Shaman tree, I just max out the Infusion for the Attunement and Penetration. Attunement is big. This is something I forgot to mention when we were going over our skills. If we take a peek at our actual Storm Bolts, as you can see, they're going to scale off your attunement. They're going to gain base spell damage per point of attunement. So I'm currently at 101 attunement. So our Storm Bolts are going to be at 101 base spell damage. So that's going to be incredibly helpful for our damage and why you're going to want to be focusing into attunement on all of your gear, which we'll get to soon. But also here in the skill trees, attunement is important. Sky Warrior for the Fury Leap cooldown. And then I just grab the increased attack speed with an active totem. You're always going to have the War Cry totem down, so you can get that free 25%. I do have attunement and stun avoidance here. Also, the stun chance is nice. We're going to be stunning and freezing a lot. So things will very rarely be able to attack you. As long as you are spamming the NATOs, they're usually going to be stunned or frozen. And then we can also go up here and grab our Shattered Heavens for the increased cold damage, and the 2 points in here just to get over there. Then the base spell damage here in Rune. Then we can grab the Attunement and Mana Regen. Mana Regen is incredibly important. We'll get to that here in the gear in a moment, but just know Mana Regen is very important for this build, so you are going to want this bonus here in the Elemental Shrines. I will be maxing out Swirling Maelstrom with my final points here, just so we can get more health and mana. Also, the extra Maelstroms when hit is a nice little bonus. Then Lagan's Answer here for the chance to cast Stormbolt on spell hits, and then also the increased area and the chance to indirect Stormbolt cast to double cast at 20%. So there can be a lot more bolts for us, but currently that's what I'm running for my passives, and I find this works pretty darn well. Quickly, let's run through our gear. So for the helmet, I like to use the Tusk Great Helm for the damage leech and the increased health. You just want to stack your health up as much as you can with this build. There's not a lot of other big defensive layers besides health and armor with this build, so you just want as much as those as possible. On here, what you're really going to want to be looking for is just like Exalted Attunement, and then there's not that great of options in terms of a second prefix. So you could do like Mana, Vitality. There's really not anything set in the stone for that second prefix. They're just like really not that great of options. Here I have just the crit avoidance to get me over that 100% with my blessing, and then increased health there. On the amulets, I would just use one that gives you different resistances. So there's this one and also the fire and lightning version. But then mana, crit chance, crit multi, cold penetration, anything like that would be really good for your prefixes. For your wand, I've just been using a crystal wand because it gives you more mana and gives you good base spell damage. From here, I do have actually a really good one with crit multi and cast speed. The cast speed is completely overkill for this build. If I go ahead and use my skills here, I'm at 92%. It doesn't need to be that high. Like 50% is plenty, but that ends up working out right now. This is kind of my ideal wand right here. I might want to change that mana and mana regen for crit chance if I do this katana setup. But if I'm using the axe, this would be my ideal setup, just not with freeze rate multiplier being the exalted. I would just want like crit multi being exalted most likely, or the penetration. But something like this is going to be what you're looking for. For our other weapon, I've just been using the eagle wing for the base crit chance. That's basically a cast less of the war cry or maelstrom that you have to do. So that ends up being pretty helpful. And then also just throwing like crit chance, crit multi. You can throw the mana regen thing on here too. Like I said, mana regen is very important right now. At least if you're casting your tornadoes, it's going to go up by like 1. So I'm about 22, 23. Ideally, I would like to be around a 30 or so mana regen. It's going to make it a lot easier for bossing because you can go ahead and just constantly hold down the button and get way more nados off. The boss is going to be dead before you run out of mana. Right now, I'm kind of teetering on that edge. But otherwise, just keep going for the cold penetrations. Shredding armor is not a bad option to have on there as well, just because it goes so high, even without being exalted. Mine's up to 161%. For our chest piece, I like the Greatwood coat because it gives you a good amount of armor. Then also the base spell damage. Here, you're going to want Attunement levels 2 tornado, because that is also going to give you spell damage. You can fit in a few more things. If you guys do have a lot of ranks of tornado, so you get like a tier 7 or something, what you could end up doing is maybe drop like a point or 2 out of Swift Wings and Storm Dervish here, and then try to get down to Druidic Control for the stationary tornadoes. It's going to help you out a lot to see. When you just start spamming these like crazy, there's a lot of like boss attacks that you just can't see, and it's really annoying. So if I could just have them all stay in one place, I think that would be my ideal scenario, but do not focus on that. Just if you get like a tier 7 level tornado, that could be a good option for you. For your rings, I do want like the mana regen rings, the mana regen, but for right now, I do just have some crit chance, and then for like your prefixes on there, just look for like the Exalted Attunement with mana regen or crit chance if you have the mana regen rings. basically any of those inverse. So if you have like a copper ring, you're going to want mana regen on it. If you have the mana regen ring, throw like crit chance on it. Anything like that will work well. My belts isn't my ideal one, but here you're just going to want like increased health, hybrid health, cold damage, and mana regen. Something that gives you resistances or armor. Currently, I just have one that gives me potion slots, so this is something I'm looking to upgrade soon. On my ring, I currently have one just fill in a fire resistance. You're just going to want like a copy of your copper or the sapphire rings. Same thing, attunement, mana regen, resistance filling, anything like that. On my gloves, I just have the void resistance ones for filling in. Otherwise, you can do crit chance or the mana one. Same thing with the rings. Attunement, crit chance, cast speeds, hybrid health as your like defensive layers are going to be your best bets. For boots, I just have the increased haste effect ones right now. Ideally, like I said, I do want to swap to the Vaon's Chariot with like 2 LP so I can get the movement speed and hybrid health over there. Is going to be what I'm ideally looking for later on. But just set up your boots to be purely move speed and defensive. Now the relic, I just have it filling in some resistances. Here, crit multi, attunement, frailty, and some resistance filling. There's going to be another one that can give you more health leech, which would be a really good option if you have your resistances sorted out. And also there's one that gives you base spell damage for cold skills. Could be another good one. So there's a few options for relics that you can use, but just fill in with whatever kind of gear you can get. Now the idols, really the only ones you want to be focusing on for the most part are going to be these ornate idols where you can get base spell damage for Stormbolt. It's going to go up to like 18, I believe. Yeah, so you can get base 36 spell damage for your Stormbolts right there. Don't worry too much about the suffix on these. Just kind of get whatever you can get. Everything else, just fill it in with like increased health idols. So the stout idols with double health is going to be really good. And then I think what I'm going to end up doing is basically making these armor health things and fill them in here for the grand idols that I have. Just fill in another 6 of these over here once I get to them. But right now, yeah, that's what I've been running for my gear. I think it's been working pretty well. For our blessings, I've been running the crit multi here from the Black Sun. You could also use like the spell leech would be another good option, or crit chance if you need more crit chance. On this build, you're really going to want to be focusing on getting guaranteed crits, but it's not too hard to do with the Maelstrom. Then I just do mana here from Ending the Storm. Then I do Crit Strike Avoidance from Reign of Dragons. Age of Winter, I do Shredding Cold Resistance, but you can do Percentage Armor as well if you want to be a little bit more tanky. And then from Spirits of Fire, I just do the Flat Armor. It's going to help you out a lot and give you a lot of extra damage reduction, especially if you have like increased armor like my boots have it here. It's going to end up working very well. Right now I'm at 32%, but you could very easily get this up to like 50% reduction. Yeah, overall, I've been absolutely loving this build. It's been very easy to play. I'm just kind of playing it as I'm talking through the end of this video, but you can just see how much it just rips through everything. Just be casting nados in front of you, spamming your maelstroms and war cries as you go, and it's just going to essentially sweep the entire dungeon for you. And it works very well here. We'll do it on a exiled mage here, so I like to stack up my nados. When he spawns in, I do my little jump, and he'll end up disappearing. And I didn't even have that much maelstrom, so I don't even think I was guaranteed critting there. So it still kills very quick, even if you're not being like super attentive to your maelstrom stacks. But as long as you are spamming your 1 and 3 buttons or wherever you put those 2 skills, you're gonna end up being at guaranteed crit. So yeah. If you guys did enjoy the build video, make sure you leave a thumbs up on it to let me know. Also consider subscribing for more Last Epoch content. There's going to be a ton of builds coming. Once I get into this merchant guild and get that thing leveled up, we're going to be churning out these builds, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So hopefully I'll see you guys back for that. But anyways, I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you all in the next video. See ya.